This episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show is brought to you by American Helix. The American Helix is a revolutionary new concept in smoking technology. Designed and manufactured by American Glassblowers, this pipe is light years ahead of its time. Based on Bernoulli's principle, the shape of the pipe, along with an innovative intake system, creates a Venturi effect through precision micro holes in the chamber, which results in a slower burn that conserves tobacco and gives a smooth, refreshing experience, making the American Helix the smoothest hitting pipe on the market. For further info or to locate their products, you can find them online at AmericanHelix.com. That's AmericanHelix.com. This episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show is brought to you by Mountain Glass Arts. For the month of August 2016, Mountain Glass is offering their Chinese color and clear rod and tubing at 40% off. Just put in the code CHINESE, that is CHINESE, at checkout. And for all you soft glass nerds, they're having their Effetre sale, 30% off rods, COE 104 sale. Just put in the code Effetre, that's EFFETRE, in checkout, and you'll receive 30% off. Any questions, comments, or concerns, just go to mountainglass.com. That's mountainglass.com. This is the Wise Guy Radio Show, a podcast dedicated to educating and inspiring through conversations with today's top talents in the world of glass. We will be dissecting their journeys in hopes to deliver actionable content that you, the artist, can start implementing now, helping you grow not only as a creative spirit, but also a successful artistic entrepreneur. With a little organization, relationship building, and your artistic ability, you can obtain greatness. Climb aboard, whether an artist, retail owner, or enthusiast. We have a ton of fun in store for you. Welcome to the Wise Guy Radio Show. Hey, what's happening? Welcome to the Wise Guy Radio Show, episode number 122. This is Jay Michael, your host. Thank you so much for tuning in today. With 17 years of experience behind the torch, I am as excited as always to bring you conversations with artists, sharing their stories in hopes to inspire and entertain while helping you grow your business. And today is no exception. Today's episode features Mike Mason, curator, administrator, and creator of Torch Talk on Facebook. You can find them at facebook.com/Torch Talk. And when I became a member of Torch Talk, there was 1,000 members, and now there is almost 6,000 members, which is absolutely unbelievable and pretty badass. So it talks about the creation of Torch Talk, their Torch Talk Tuesday YouTube show. You can just Google Torch Talk Tuesdays or Torch Talk, or go to YouTube and search it. And also we'll have all the links here for you in the show notes there for their Torch Talk Facebook group and the YouTube page. And basically every Tuesday they do a live Google Hangout. And there's usually 3 or 4 artists on there. Will Young and Mike Mason are the 2 cats on there that run the show. And then they have a guest or 2 or 3 and typically talk about glass techniques. They share actual demonstrations, all kind of fun stuff that's relating to glass blowing. And they're really excited for these guys. They were gracious to have me on back when I first launched the show to present the ideas and the concepts for the podcast, and then had me on almost exactly a year later to the date, where I did a flower demonstration on there and received amazing feedback from the audience who watched it and participated, those that actually went through the process and took action and made a flower. And it was pretty badass, and I loved the response and the feedback. It was pretty cool. So hopefully you will go check them out, and they have a whole shit ton of archives of content, different shows, and we get into discussion about that. And Mike and I have a very similar way of thinking and brain processing, so this is a fun educational roller coaster ride of a conversation, and I hope you will enjoy this one for sure. And just today I sent out the Secret Santa email to all those who signed up and participated before August 15th. If you did, then thank you for participating. We have over 54 artists that are involved in this first one. And because of the response, and just because in general I think it's fun, I want to do this every quarter. So basically they're going to line up with the end of each quarter to end one quarter and start the next, basically. So the next one will be in October, which I know is close to this quarter. Before we get into the interview, I wanted to talk about real quick the idea to slow down when you're working. Just yesterday, I had the day I was supposed to actually be off, and was asked to cover a shift, and I decided to because I enjoy it. And through the day, I ended up getting a custom order for a leafy sea dragon sculpture that I made, and it was about a 2-hour piece that I did. Came out super awesome. I was pretty pumped up. I actually posted some pictures of the actual seahorse, of the sea dragon that I made on my Instagram, which you can go check out. It is at jmichaelglass, JMICHAEL Glass. And it took me probably about an hour, I'd say, to make the actual sea dragon itself. And at the end of the night, everything was good to go, cooled off, and went to go sign it. We have an engraving station where we have our Dremel tools and all of the lap wheels and cutting wheels that the engravers use. And they have a basin sink that they have their water in that helps to run through, obviously, and keep everything cool when they're engraving. And after I got done signing it, I backed up a little bit, and just because of being somewhat in a hurry, because I was getting ready to get off, and it was busy, and it was just crazy at the end of the night, I managed to knock the end of the basin, which then knocked the seahorse and broke the seahorse and knocked it off the figure base I made, and hit the floor and broke into 1,000 fucking pieces. And it was heartbreaking and embarrassing more than anything. We had a store full of people. The guests, actually, I had them come an hour after I initially told them to come, just because I wanted to make sure this thing went through a decent annealing process and cooled off in time. And so they came, and I broke it. So now I've got to remake the seahorse or the sea dragon and then reattach it and all that fun shit. But it made me realize that the reason it broke was because I was in a hurry and I was rushing. And it really made me think about, at the end of the day, or even during the process of creation, that it's really important that we slow down and take our time and focus on the step and the process and be in the moment. My brain was all over the place. It was actually been a really, really long week to end my week there. And so I'm not making excuses, but the fact of the matter is I just wasn't thinking and I was rushing. So when you're taking this, to heart and you're in the middle of working, take your time. Don't rush through the process, because typically when we rush is when things get broken or fucked up, or just don't go the way we planned, which then can lead towards frustration, which then can lead into more rushing because we're losing time per se because we're messing up. It's kind of one of those vicious circles that we get into. So just a takeaway from this was to take your time when you're in the studio, when you're finishing the process, when you're packing your orders, just everything that you do in the process, take your time. That way, when your customer, whether it's an individual person, retail stores, whatever, receive your items, that they receive them intact and the way that you made them. So there you go, a little tip for you, a little sharing my experience kind of thing too. And other than that, I'm going to let you go and get into this episode with Mike Mason, episode 122. Please, as always, do not forget to share this with your friends and family. If you're new to the show, definitely go on to iTunes and subscribe if you have not yet. If you have an iPhone or any kind of laptop or computer. If you're using a Droid, you can go on to Stitcher. There's podcast. I don't know, I forget the hell it's called, but there's different podcast catchers out there, basically, and apps that you can listen to for the Droid systems. But the Stitcher app is the most popular one. So whichever way you want to do. And also, if you have not yet, go to wiseguymedia.com. In the top right-hand corner of the website, I now have a new action button where you can come on there and subscribe instead of having a little pop-up window, because I don't like the pop-ups myself, and they get annoying. And I'm sure you as well. So there's a little actionable thing in the top right corner. It just says to sign up for a email, which is basically it's going to be sharing a PDF on the So You Want to Be a Glassblower series. It's a 5-part email series that you'll be receiving, and just by signing up to that, you'll receive the first email immediately, and then every day after that, you'll receive part 2 through 5. And just to give you some actionable stuff to read, some kind of inspiration and influence as well, and also get you on our email list so you can stay up to date with all things Wise at Wise Guy Media and Wise Guy Radio. So there you go. Love ya. Take care. Have a beautiful day. Happy melting. Stay safe, stay hydrated, and we will see you next time on episode 123. And for now, enjoy 122 with Mike Mason from Torch Talk. Peace. Hey, Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey.
So, yeah, dude, stoked to have you on here. definitely want to get all you Torch Talk boys on here, and now you're on here, and it's pretty cool to get on here and share your story. And I'm sure we'll be rambling and all over the fucking place because you and I our brains work very similarly. So
Cheers,
I'm looking
man.
forward to this roller coaster here. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah,
I
dude.
love the podcast and what you're doing with it, and it's a real honor to be here.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. So before we go too crazy, if you want to give us your humble beginnings, where you got started, and how you were introduced to the torch.
Yeah. I'm pretty new to the game. I only started like about 3.5 years ago. I started as an apprentice with Mike Lewis, who's known as Fat Mike in the biz, wig-wag master, OG, a whole bunch of glass companies. Look him up, guys. He's great. And then since then, I've kind of I've taken a ton of classes. I'm almost like a freak experiment at this point. Like what happens if you take a motivated 32-year-old, let him take every dope class with every great teacher imaginable. And so yeah, I'm super blessed I've learned with a lot of awesome people. One of my first important learning experiences was with Mattis Cookie, and he kind of sent me down this path of Venetian style working and shaping, and I've tried to kind of keep my teaching lineage within that a bit. Actually, if they don't trace back to Emilio Santini, I want nothing to do with them. No, I'm just kidding, but it's actually fascinating how many people trace their technique back to him, his work at Salem and other places, Penland, spots like that. But yeah, I'm primarily a Marine worker. Lawrence Stump is another one of the big teachers in my life. I spent time with him. Kiva Ford, Steve Bates, Robert Mickelson, and Laceface. The list goes on and on. Jason Gordon, he's another important teacher of mine. Yeah, so really I've just been learning as much as I can over the past few years. I really believe it's a magical time to be a flame worker because so many of the best alive are teaching. And I used to take trips to go see concerts and stuff, but all of that has just been focused over the past few years into taking trips for classes. A lot of them have been at Virtue Flameworks in Maryland, and I'm in Norfolk, Virginia, so that's not too far. But others, to study with Kiva Ford, took a trip up the East Coast to New York. Lawrence Stump, that was a cross-country trip. So yeah, my path over the past few years has almost been educational, I guess, in nature. I've made products when I need to, and really all of it has kind of been about getting to that next class. And it's almost like college is ending now. I really feel like that. It's been nearly 4 years now. I've learned with so many awesome people, and I really feel like I'm just starting to put all of these techniques together into unique products.
Hell yeah, yeah! It sounds like you're a seeker of knowledge. It's awesome, and especially with the, I definitely want to get into the Torch Talk a little bit later on, but definitely shows with you're also willing to share the knowledge too, which is huge.
Well, cheers, man. Yeah, the Torch Talk thing, that grew out of classes actually. Will Young and the other guys who we originally did it with all met in Dustin Revere's online classes. And when those ended, we just kind of wanted to keep getting together once a week. And we thought it would be if we broadcasted, it'll be a good thing. And, a lot of what we demo and stuff is not necessarily the crazier stuff I learned in these classes, but certainly a lot of what I consider the basics of like the tool chest. Mm-hmm. And it's been a big part of my journey because, as I learn these basics and all these different pieces that are kind of fundamental to expressing yourself in glass, being able to demonstrate them live, getting to that point of fluidity where I can kind of do it and also talk and think at the same time, that's been really important for me. And yeah, it's been just kind of a developmental thing for me and learning something well enough to be able to show it to others.
Yeah.
I don't consider myself a teacher or anything like that, but a demonstrator certainly. And like I said, getting to that point where I feel like I can, make a show of it at least that's been really important for me and kind of a fun way to internalize what I've learned during all these classes. It's so important when you've taken a class to come home and immediately try and implement those things or sometime, before you forget all the
Yeah,
nuances
I
that
know.
you've absorbed.
Yeah, dude. Like I know recently the classes I took like a couple years back, 2 years ago, and I guess now I just, like they were collaborative classes and watching these cats work together, but also they were teaching us different texts and whatever. But like during the collaboration processes, they were going through the process of making the piece they were making or whatever they were doing. It was like hours upon hours of just sitting there and just watching. I was like, fuck, man, I cannot wait to get home to get my torch going. Like I was ready to leave the class, but I was like 4.5 hours away, so I couldn't do,
Right.
I couldn't do that. But
Yeah.
and to back up too, like you're talking about like to be able to fine tune your work enough to where you can actually sit and talk and tell people what you're doing while you're doing it is huge, and not everybody has that ability to really tap into that. Like with that Disney, people all the time are like, "Can you talk?" And a couple of our artists, they usually don't. They will, but they usually don't. Myself personally, I want to wear a button that says "Feel free to ask me questions," just because people are so intimidated. You got this big ass fire going on, and you're working on stuff, and of course, there's times in the process where you really need to be focused on what you're doing. But generally speaking, like you can talk while you're doing it, and people are always so amazed that I can sit there and have a full conversation with them while I'm going through the process of what I'm doing, even though I'm making what I'm making 1,000 times. They don't realize that, but I do. So it becomes an easy ability to be able to sit there and talk to them while I'm working, and for you to be able to do that, only being on the torch for 3.5 years is huge. Now, do you have a background before the torch stuff where you were communicating with other human beings on that kind of level of like an educational side of things?
Not necessarily. My work prior to the torch, I did graphic design and product development. So like making features for websites and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So nothing really where I would have to do that. But
Yeah.
at the same token, I've never really had an issue, with public speaking or anything like that. It's all kind of secondhand or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. We were talking with a friend about the Myers-Briggs tests, and those are like personality tests for those who aren't into this stuff, but you can look them up. They're pretty fascinating. It's like splits your personality into 4 categories, and most people skew hard, in one direction on any of these various things. But on the first one, it's like basically whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, and I consistently score right in the middle on that category. So it's kind of the worst of both. But
No, I'm the same way, dude. I'm a type A heavy, like on that side personality, but I'm an AB personality. It was kind of weird. I was surprised by it because I'm like a heavy driven, and then I enjoyed being behind my desk or my bench or my torch or whatever, and away from the public eye in a sense.
yeah, I think it's I don't know. It helps me understand most people generally on that front, because
Yeah.
I have elements of both. That's what I'd like to think is the positive. But like I said, I'm probably just the worst of both to everybody else.
Well, I'll put that. I'll put a link to that test to the Myers-Briggs test on the show notes, so those out there that haven't never done it before can get a hold of it, and it's a free test.
Right, yeah, it's pretty neat stuff, and I do think it has some relevance and can give you some insights into your own personality.
Oh, it's huge, especially when you start setting up studios and bringing other personalities in. It's I've heard a lot of companies nowadays are doing these type of tests to figure out to make sure that these employees are compatible, whether they're a leader or just an employee in a sense, depending on what kind of role that they want to get into.
Oh yeah, yeah. My last job, this is maybe what pushed me into flame working. I was always a glass collector. Smoke a lot of weed. No, like,
I'll be editing that out, sir.
yeah. Can we leave that on the cutting room floor, please, Jason? No, just kidding. But yeah, the last company that I worked at, it was like Reynolds and Reynolds. We ran like 40,000 car dealership websites or whatever, like an insane amount, and it integrates all the inventory and such. And so we managed this huge network of those sites. Another company bought the company really just for our huge customer base, and good name, and just immediately they became them. And it was bought by a private individual, and shareholders weren't cool with this. Like the company that bought it was kind of weird. and sketchy. And sure enough, like in this process of like deciding who they were going to fire and who they were going to offer a job in Texas, I'm in Virginia, so this is a big move, but you know, they were trying to figure out who was worth keeping. And they totally gave us a Myers-Briggs test.
Interesting.
It's like, what?
Huh.
Yeah, it was like a Myers-Briggs test and then an IQ test. And it was just, I've taken a bunch of these things since I was like a teenager, you know, and then for fun as an adult on the
Right.
internet, whatever. And it's just like, I recognize these tests. You're not fooling me, man. They're only trying to keep the geniuses and the compatible personality types or whatever. So yeah, no, I've actually lived through that. And yeah, somehow I made the cut. They were, they offered me the job in College Station, Texas, and I had zero interest in moving there. I own a house here in Virginia or whatever, and it was just way too much complication to move at that time. And I mean, it's like it's outside Austin. Austin's pretty sweet. You know, Austin City Limits, great. You know, yeah, they get a lot of good music there and such. It's a pretty chill area in Texas, but this was like outside of it and just this new area, super low cost of living, man. I'd probably, you know, be 500,000 up in the bank by now if I'd made this move, but whatever. Anyways, yeah, no, didn't want to work with this company. They drug tested for nicotine.
Whoa.
Yeah, yeah. Like like me and the other employees, we researched this company, and they had just like an atrociously bad reputation. This is one of the reasons all the shareholders were freaking out, but it all kind of happened under the table pretty quickly before anybody could really do anything to stop it. And yeah, that's business. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, I'm super stoked to be some percentage out of that sort of cycle, you know, where
Yeah.
decisions are being made for completely logical and heartless reasons. And yeah, man, it is what it is. Yeah, I'm much happier making glass than cleaning up car dealership websites or making brochures for apartment complexes.
Right.
Did product development at forrent.com.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're like a Trader or a Dominion Enterprises company now, but yeah, you can go look at all the apartments on there and stuff. Yeah, we did like room planners and brochures that pulled all the data in via XML. For you nerds out there, no, just kidding. This is my world.
It's
But
juicy.
yeah. We, you know, so basically we were generating these really cool brochures for apartment complexes, like at the click of a button, and then charging them a ton of money for it. Not my idea, but that's how they did it.
That's how it happens. I see that shit all the time, dude. Especially on the
Yeah.
online business stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's the gig, man.
Yeah.
You know, making a product and getting more for it than went into it. So
Yeah, but it's also skill sets that you've learned that you've been able to carry into what you're doing now, and that's what I find fun as I talk to more and more artists that are on the show is like all these skills we've all been learning through our life. It's like it's all been gearing up to become a glass artist, and we could take all this shit and run a business, professionally through marketing and advertising and building websites. I mean, it all takes time, but still, now that you have the skill set, you know, you're helping run the Torch Talk group. I mean, that's a great example of it.
oh yeah, I'm practically a god at making memes because of my design background. No,
Mike Mason, meme god.
right.
Yeah, sure.
Honestly, though, it's with the sticker packs that we do. We do these charity sticker packs. We call it the Hunger Fund. A couple bucks from each pack goes to Feeding America, and by donating at the right times when they have sponsors tripling, we're able to do 66 meals per pack. We're up to nearly 30,000 this year alone with these packs. So it's I'm man, like I'm pretty fucking proud that I've somehow managed to turn making memes into actual fucking meals for people in need. So yeah, there is actually a slice of reality in that. But no, yeah, so much of my process actually begins digitally. All of my marine projects are heavily broken down in Photoshop, and you know, I mean, I'm using the like basically pixels per inch to get all the increments to match up. So I'm able to, even as I'm making components live, I'm able to measure my, you know, if I'm a millimeter off in that component or, you know, a sliver of the millimeter off, I'm able to make that slight of an adjustment in the original build breakdown, you know, and then at the next step, correct for it. And all this stuff, I'm sure other people have their methodologies for it, but the digital art and graphic design background has actually significantly enabled my process, especially in Marine, keeping everything with really tight control over ratio and sizing.
Yeah.
And a lot of my work is like these torch face Marines, for example. It's all about nailing that exact shape that reads to the eye, and that's about having that little tiny dot be the right size, the sheath around it for the triple mix. That's got to be the right ratio of taper, and having control of that right down to the millimeter and being able to check against it digitally. For me, that's been huge, and everybody's got their own process. And a guy like Josh Ford or something, he may not use a computer at all, but that's what he's, inspires me with.
Right.
But for me, yeah, man, so much of my background in that has influenced my work here. And when I look back at some of the digital art that I was doing years ago, it's I was almost playing with glass there digitally. And then just my entire methodology is, I don't necessarily want to sit there and paint a bowl of grapes or some shit. I'm much more interested in pushing the capabilities of the medium itself. It's something I did with digital art and 3D design software back in the day. At one point, like, I was the Meta Creations Artist of the Month. Way back in the day. Yeah, and like this company used to make all the dopest like plugins for Photoshop, and then they made some really great 3D software. But the reason that I won that award or whatever was because I was really pushing the limits of what imagery the software they made was capable of generating.
Huh.
And I feel like that's become a big part of my journey in glass now. Is we were talking about this before the show. Something I'm really into is just finding ways to preserve really hard edges in hot glass.
Yeah.
Like with the prismatic honeycombs that I do, that's like a fumed honeycomb type of thing. But then being able to manipulate those shapes, finding these methodologies to preserve harder edges in glass than is technically possible. I don't know, I find that process fascinating, and
yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, trying to find unique processes and ways to work, and I'm just getting started on this journey. It's only been like I said, I feel like I'm just coming out of college. It's been nearly 4 years now, or 3.5, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
I haven't checked the date in a while.
Well, it seems like with your background, with the classes you've taken, and your background also with your digital media stuff, the people you learn from are very technical. I mean, you get into the Kiva Fords and the Mataskukis and Mickelson and those guys, and they're all very detail oriented. And it reminds me of like when I took my class with Joe Peters, and he had his honeycomb Murini that he had just like a shit ton of chips already pre-cut of all kind of ranges and sizes, and he showed us how he encased them and did his pendants and stuff. But he explained the process, and I had an idea, but I still wondered, and I was blown away when he's explaining, for those that don't really know glass necessarily, to get a honeycomb, say like a marble that's got a pattern in there, that's got a honeycomb pattern that's made from a milli chip or a Marini chip. It takes thousands of feet of pulled out cane that has color on the outside to be able to cut down the right length and diameters to make everything match properly. So if you have like an encasement that's got like 20 circles in there of a honeycomb or whatever, they all have to be the same diameter, thickness-wise. And if one's off by a couple millimeters, you're going to be able to tell the difference, especially when you put all these circles together that then squish together and make all these little hexagons, And it's just an amazing process, but the amount of hours and time that goes into that process is why you can charge what you can charge for Marini these days. And I like where things are going in our industry, from going from the influence from the 200 to 300 years ago of the Venetian style glass artists that were making Marini. I mean, Jason Lee's like a good example of it, where he's taken his concepts of doing traditional Venetian work and making Marinis to a whole new level of modern glass blowing in terms of flame working. It's just mind blowing, But the amount of hours and the amount of skill set and the amount of time it takes, and the fact that you're using CAD, almost like doing 3D CAD drawings to make the shit work, dude, it's unbelievable. To me, it's your influence you have is there from your teachers, but you also don't have any influence except from yourself. So you're not like, I was kind of a side thing. I always kind of say like those that go to art school, you kind of lose your artistic sense in a kind of in a way, because you're doing what a teacher tells you to do instead of being guided on what you already know. Does that make sense? To take your ideas and then create your skill level, where a teacher's like, okay, you have to do this, 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 and this way, my way, or it's like, the highway kind of horseshit. Mm-hmm. And like when I teach glass blowing, the very beginning basics, it's my way. I want you to learn the way that I do it, because I feel from my experience that the basic foundation I could teach you will allow you to then take your way and take that foundation that you now have and then do what the fuck you want to do with your glass, without me telling you what to do and how to do it. And so many people get stuck in this mindset of, okay, I have to do this, this, and this, A, B, and C exactly this way. I can't ever change any of that because I'm not going to get to the end result, where really you can get to the end result 4,000 different fucking ways. There's no right way to get, as long as you get to the end result,
Yeah, I agree with that, man. I think I'm still, too young to kind of really be the one to make these statements, but at my current perception of it is that the faster you get to the point at which the glass operates in your mind the same way it does in the torch, that to me is the goal, like for it to get a beginner to that place, because that's the point at which you can start conceptualizing your own ways to do things and not be stuck with, like just being taught almost monkey style. Okay, you pull here, you do this, you draw here. When you can truly start playing with glass in your mind and have a reasonable assumption that it's going to behave the same way when you actually get to the torch, I think that opens exponential doors, and just getting that internal understanding is incredibly important, and I feel like that's what frees people from having to do it the rote way they've been taught. Do you want to actually be a glass worker, or do you just want to be somebody we could swap into Ann Meng's production line? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Fucking bastards.
Yeah.
But yeah, I completely agree, because like when I teach, like the first 9 hours of my classes is nothing but sitting and watching. That way when you're at a red light, you can sit and think about what you saw, and it's 3-hour increments. I don't want to overload what's going on. You can sit there all fucking day, but I say 3 hours, boom, clock goes off, alarm goes off, get the fuck out of here, because if you get too much, then you can't focus on what you just saw that day. And even just bringing home a couple rods and sitting in front of the TV and practicing rotation and stuff, like little simple techniques, but the fact that you're saying that to be able to visualize the way glass moves is so big. My brain works in a way where I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I'm very visual in a sense, and I can see glass flowing the same way like water moves, or the way dough would work when you're mixing up dough for like a pizza or some shit or whatever. Right. It's just the fluidity I can see in my brain, but it's also 17 years behind the torch helps out. But even before that, I still had that visual acumen in my brain to be able to see things work. Not everybody has that. A lot of people are more tactile. They got to physically do it to be able to understand it. But if you can at least see it being done, then you can be like, oh my God, I didn't know it was done that way. And really, a lot of our secrets are that the shit's really fucking easy. It's but it's not at the same time. You got to have a technical skill, a hand skill. But in the sense, it's like cooking, either you have it or you don't. But if you can learn a technical basic foundation first, then you can get to where you need to get to, in a sense. You don't have to be an artist to make a fucking handpipe. If you want to make this amazing creation that's considered quote unquote art, then yes, you should be an artist and have that mindset. But if you're like an engineer brain or whatever designer, you can still be a glass blower and manufacture and create things in glass once you have a foundation set.
Yeah. I think it's come up before in some discussions about how people from the culinary world translate well into glass. Mm-hmm. And, that ability to follow a recipe and make it come out right. And you can't just show that to somebody at Burger King.
Yeah.
And expect it to work.
Yep.
And yeah, it makes me realize that I left out a really important teacher before, and that's Roger Paramore.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he really gets into the fundamentals of glass. Like Santini is kind of the guy, because he traces back a lot of my teachers I would recommend learning with, and he does the longer form classes at Corning. He may not anymore. I spoke to him a few years ago. He was already like, I don't want to do that anymore. But yeah, it's sorry, I lost that one, but whatever.
It's okay.
Yeah. He gets into the fundamentals of the material and what's happening at the molecular level. So yeah, that's where I lost it. Was why I recommend these people as fundamental teachers. Santini traces right back to the Venetian source, but uh, Paramore, he's the one who gave me this kind of conceptual understanding of what's happening right down to the molecular level, and that's what's kind of when you internalize that, it makes everything a lot easier. Understanding why something breaks, how to prevent it or how to fix it, knowing where the stress is at in your pieces, all this stuff, and that I really think that was one of the more important classes that I've taken because it really did help build that internal understanding.
Yeah, man, absolutely. This online course I'm going to be teaching that I'm launching here in October. Those are the whole week. That's all is all dedicated to the science of glassblowing, because I feel the same way. If you can get that part of your foundation to understand the science that's involved with what you're doing, learn what coefficient and COE and all that shit is, and why things don't work together, and why certain colors, because myself personally, I'm still learning all this new color coming out because I don't use that much color, but now that I have access to all this color, I want to use it. So I'm still learning. Certain colors can't go through an annealing cycle. Like I just made this Ninja Turtle a couple of weeks back, and it probably only went through 3 or maybe 4 kiln cycles. I think maybe 4, but I spent 3 months on it over a period of time, doing a little bit here and there. And I use forest green, and forest green could be a kick in the balls, as a color just in general. So I made sure I mixed a bunch of clear with it and tried watering it down and stuff. It still was pretty opaque, but I figured all this clear was going to help it on a molecular level to be more stable.
Yeah.
And it still checked all the shit on me. And I don't know if it was because it went through too many kiln cycles, because of how sensitive this color is, or what the deal is. And it's these kind of fails you have to be able to learn the process and what you're doing to experiment, whether it's a full project or just an experimentation. But that being said, to understand the molecular level and what goes on in the science of the glass is so important to understand down the road. Okay, this is why this happened. Like I remember years ago when I was doing inside outs and something would crack and break on me, I would say fuck it. So I'd get a hammer and smash it and look at the inside of the wall to dissect, like, okay, were these 2 color lines touching, so it trapped a small little air bubble, because sometimes you can see like a little needle point pocket that the air bubble was left behind, or where colors raised on the surface where it should be nice and smooth. Like all these little variations of things that I really wanted to find out what the fuck was going on, just because I feel like I had to, and then I'm glad I did, because it's led me to become successful in areas and become proficient in my glass work, and not have these issues of things breaking all the fucking time. I still have issues with things breaking. Don't get me wrong, as glass, but
Yeah.
but still, it's by really learning that science, the science and the engineering and all that shit. You really got to understand all that stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can turn a torch on and just get to work, sure, and make a big mess and maybe have something come out in the very end. But if you want to be proficient and be productive and be a quote-unquote glass blower, glass artist, you got to know that. You got to have that foundation. It's so important. I'm glad you do. And it seems like, too, you have it, or you already have that mindset from, again, previously, before you even got into glass, with all this science and computer stuff you were doing beforehand.
Yeah, I've always been something of an egghead or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just an information sponge, I guess.
Yeah, that's good.
And I definitely want to know everything I possibly can about the things that I'm interested in. So yeah, it's I think it's so important. And when you're working live, you can only make really rough approximations, unless you're like, a savant or something, and you're like
Right.
able to do like all the whiteboard calculations. But the more precise your internal understanding of this stuff is, the quicker you're going to be able to make rough approximations that'll work for what you need to do in real time.
Yeah.
Like trying to seal 2 colors together, what percentage do you need to hit that thicker color? Versus the less dense color, the more viscous color. All these little considerations, the quicker your brain can reel that shit off, is the more fluid you're going to be able to make these things happen.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, it's really, really important. And yeah, Roger Paramore, he's one of those ones that I can't recommend beginners learn with enough. And it's starting with somebody like that is really, really the right way to go. even if it's like something I've been trying to talk about lately, like on the Torch Talk group. This group has blown up. It was originally just for the audience of our show, and now it's like, whoo! It's like running a small city or state or something. It's pretty crazy. So, but one of the things that I've been trying to harp on these days is how important it is to get proper instruction early on and not reinforce bad habits and start to develop that internal understanding on the right foot. And people spend so much building a studio at home, thousands and materials and torches and kilns and all that stuff. And then I feel like they often overlook the two most important things, which are ventilation and your personal investment in yourself.
Yep.
Learning. And there's so much great information out there. And just as an example, recently somebody was like, "What would you recommend to a beginner?" on one of these posts, and everybody gave him. That guy got 120 answers, and they were all awesome. But I didn't really have a chance. I've been busy. I've been out of town at like a festival and stuff, and I didn't have a chance to reply. But I wanted to pop in there and be like, "Hey, look, man, you need to go learn your fundamentals with somebody proper because you've got so many great tips here, but the odds that you're going to implement them all properly, very low. He's going to fuck up 5 or 10% of them and just start developing habits on the wrong foot. He thought he understood it. He thinks he's doing the right thing. 6 months later, he's been doing the wrong thing the wrong way 5 times a day. Becomes very hard to unravel. And it's to the point where my advice to these guys who are like, "Hey, I'm thinking about getting my torch." It's like, start thinking about who you want to learn from first. Where's the closest, most awesome class you can get to, that's designed for beginners with somebody renowned, somebody with a track record of instructing.
Yep.
It's just so important. And yeah, just getting off on the right foot.
Yeah, I completely agree, man, 100%. And it reminds me of my first apprentice was my buddy Mark years and years and years ago, like 15 years ago. I guess I was about 2 years into it. And he's a super smart guy and was working for a wood manufacturing company that made chairs and shit. And he was about maybe 4 months into the apprenticeship, had all kind of color materials, he had built a studio, the whole 9 yards for himself out back, and cut his middle finger off and the tip of his other finger and next to it, his ring finger, and more or less was out for like a year. I couldn't do anything physically just to heal the hand. But during that time period, he bought books, went on YouTube when YouTube was kind of around. I don't even think YouTube at that point was around. But either way, he did a lot of research and read books, and sales came up. He stocked up, got all kind of materials and whatever. But over that year period of time, he just, as if he was on the torch, he never did blow glass, but he just milked it and got his brain all full of all this information. So when he turned the torch on, when he was ready for it, it was like he had never stopped blowing glass. He knew what the fuck he was doing. And there were things that he was able to do right off the bat that he was able to show me that I had no idea about, or was, like when wigwags and those kind of things were first coming out and we were seeing that stuff coming out from the West Coast, we had an idea of how to do it, but it wasn't like really a foundational type of thing. And then we sat there and he sat there at himself and he's like, "Hey, check this out," and showed me how to do it. And I was like, "Wow, this is fucking awesome." So we started doing wigwags just from Mark learning from not even doing any glass blowing, just from doing research and, looking up things on back when glasspipes.org got started. And we had the GLDGA or whatever the hell it was called before the melting pot started. And, it's just, you gotta learn. And there's so many people that are bad teachers out there that think that they can teach, and they shouldn't be teaching. They just don't have it. They teach bad habits. And if they are a good teacher, they're teaching bad habits that they have. And like my buddy Richard, he's a new guy. He's been on the torch now for maybe 4 months, and he was already asking me if I felt that he should show somebody some of the stuff. And because people are saying, "Oh man, I'd love to do that," and you know how it is. And I told him straight up, I'm like, "Dude, don't even waste your fucking time. Your habits aren't there set up yet; they're not established." And time is valuable when you're on the torch. You don't want to be showing people shit that you're learning yourself. Maybe they can sit there and watch you, get inspired, but don't teach that stuff because your habits are still not established like they should be. And all you're gonna do is pass on shitty habits. It doesn't work. I mean, especially time is valuable. when it comes to being on the torch. Every minute that you're
Right.
on there, you're learning something new and valuable. The whole 10,000 hour rule. Like I say it all the time. Like it seems like with glass blowing, it's 10,000 hours per technique in a sense.
Yeah, it just gets to the idea of not throwing a wrench into that process. Like,
Yep.
do you want to spend 10,000 hours or do you want to spend 100,000 hours? Because if you fuck the shit up in the beginning, it's going to take a lot more to erase that stuff. And then, I don't know, dude, we'll get into something a little, this is kind of crazy, and I'm not really certain there's any scientific basis behind this. But, I mean, there's studies. This is just really some cutting edge shit or whatever, but here, I'll read it to y'all. The Journal of Neurophysiology found that simply imagining exercise can tone muscle, delay atrophy, and even make your muscles stronger. And like
Yeah, I
I
believe
said, this is where we get into the speculative branch of what I'm saying here, but I really believe that I've gotten better at glass faster because I was able to develop that understanding quickly, thanks to learning with a lot of the best alive, and then thinking about it pretty much nonstop.
Yep.
Like I really do feel like that, like, in the time since then, it's like every day may as well be 10 because I'm doing so much. Even when I'm not on the torch, man, I'm in the shower. I just pulled 100 points. Not just kidding, but
I know what you mean though. It's so true.
yeah, this is really speculative, but I really do think it's plausible. There's research that indicates, that as you're imagining these things mentally and working through them mentally, that you're actually reinforcing your physical muscle memory on them.
Oh yeah, that's why when I start teaching, I make people sit and watch for the 9 hours. I feel like the 3 sessions of 3 hours makes a total 9 hours. Makes it so when you get on the torch, you're already familiar. It's intimidating, honestly, to get on the torch and turn the thing on. But once you get it going, it's familiar. Like you're saying, you have some of this muscle memory already there because you've been visualizing it in your head. And like for myself, if I have a project to work on or something that I just can't, like I need a breakthrough and something I'm trying to get going, I'll think about that shit while I'm laying in bed, and then I go to sleep, and I'll go through the process of like almost in a meditation sense. I'll actually create the piece in my head while I'm laying there as I'm falling asleep, and I hopefully will carry that into my dreams, where I'll go through the process of. And I've had breakthroughs through dreams where I've woken up and like from a dead ass sleep, and I keep a little notepad next to my bed just for ideas and shit, and come up, and I've had to wake up from a sleep and like I got to write this down right fucking now, or I'm gonna forget this tomorrow morning, kind of thing. And then I've taken those notes and brought them to the studio and was like, okay, let's go through these steps that I did in my head. And then I go through my steps and they work out perfectly. And I hear a lot of people out there, like a lot of successful people in other areas of genres of things. Tim Ferriss is a good example. He talks a lot about when high school, he was in high school wrestling, and I think maybe in college, but I think mostly high school. And he would sit and watch videos of a specific coach who was known for, I guess, creating all these national champion wrestlers all through whatever the collegiate area. And he would visualize in his head that he was the one learning from this coach. He had watched so many videos of this coach that he knew this coach's set, so he would sit there and meditate and think about this coach teaching him, and he would go through the process of learning. And so when he would actually get in the mat and would go through the process of wrestling, he knew what the fuck he was doing. And Tim Ferriss became a state champion wrestler because of it. I mean, I don't know if that was the only obviously not the only thing, but that was part of what got him to where he was at, as understanding certain moves, certain techniques, and everything else. And a lot of it, again, I think technique is really the key point of all this, to understand technique through a foundation, through good habits. But the technique, if you learn it the right way the first time, like you're saying, you'll save yourself a shit ton of time.
Yeah. And it's been the same. It's even more straightforward and like in the graphic design and development side of things. I got into this software when I was very young, like 12, 13, and 14. I really started getting into the web side of things, and these like Photoshop, for example, that's in my brain, man. We can go 40 steps deep, and I can each individual tool in there, I can imagine exactly what effect it's going to have, what settings I need to have on it. I really do think it's the same way with glass. And yeah, when you get to the point where your dreams are matching reality, yeah, you know your brain has truly, has a copy of that software.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's something we were just talking about on Torch Talk the other day, and how, again, I'm so new to this, like these are the ramblings of a child. So it's, you're feel free to toss them. But I really I kind of cringe when people genderize glass or like anthropomorphize it or whatever, right? Like, she's a beautiful woman and she's so cruel though, whatever, man. When in reality, this is all math, every single bit of it, man. Like, and the only parts that you don't really have kind of exactly are the parts that you didn't make yourself. Like what did Cymax put in there? What percentage of this ingredient or what of that? Other than like those factors, it's pretty much all math, and every bit of it can be broken down that way. And if something's going wrong repeatedly, it's not, the analogy I used on the show the other night was like people living in caves thinking that God was angry when it lightninged or whatever, they just didn't understand what was happening. And so they ascribe it to some mythical thing. And I'm not saying that people who say this like genuinely have a religious take on glass or whatever, right? It's but I feel like it's almost a cop out. It's like, no, she wasn't being cruel to you that day. Something else was wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's
user error.
Right. Yeah. And it just gets down to the idea of, understanding this thing as much as you possibly can. And yeah, it's just a bunch of variables, and the clearer picture you have of that, and the more you've poured through it, the faster you're going to be able to turn that into a constructive reality in real time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why doing renderings on paper is huge, to kind of engineer it on paper in a sense.
Right.
And really build things out. Like when I'm doing like a figurine or a sculpture or something like that, I'll break down the body parts into components and figure out like where they're going to attach and how they're going to attach, and all that kind of stuff. It's stressful at times and then a lot of fun, because I definitely enjoy that process of the creative side of the design, because then when you get into the manufacturing process, it's still creative, but it's more of a manufacturing process.
Yeah, no, it is. It's honestly, like with the marine thing, there's a ton of projects that I've never bothered to finish because I planned them all out and there wasn't really anything challenging about the actual build. And there's just zero excitement level for me about that. Like once I've built it out and I know for 100% it would go down, it's like, whatever, man. That shit's done. I really don't need to show anybody else it was done. It's done for me. And maybe if I can make a good money on it or whatever for the time, I'll do it. But honestly, that the actual building of the thing is kind of the more frustrating aspect of it to me. That's where things can go wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just being able to plan that and get there and thinking through. I'm still so young in this that I really have to think through the shaping and stuff. I've got to think about what angle I'm going to hit this part with this size of a flame, and that part really does take even extra time. But being able to do it in the first place, it's key. It's that's kind of my advice for beginners: is develop that understanding as quickly as possible through research and then experimentation until they match.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree, dude. So, speaking of torches, what kind of torch are you running?
I have 2 torches. Well, I mean, 3 if you want to, or 4 if you want to count my hand torches. But my primary torches is a GTT Delta Elite, and then a Herbert Arnold 40 millimeter.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, I love those torches, man. They're both amazing, like super torches.
Hell yeah. And how's your studio set up? You got it out of your house?
Yeah, my studio is like taken over my dining room, and my kitchen has almost been taken over by cold working. And and I have basically an enclosed hood. If you pull up like any of the episodes I've demoed on Torch Talk, you guys can kind of see into it or whatever. But yeah, it's basically a tile desk with a giant what they call a barley box. But it's really like a supersized chemical extraction hood that they use like in chemistry or whatever. so they can do things that produce fumes or whatever and suck it right out. And it basically encloses the desk on all sides but the face. And then it has circular cut-ins on the side and basically the working area where my arms will be or where glass will be pointing out. So,
Oh yeah, nice.
yeah, it's in my home, and it just really helps keep things contained. I don't want I sweep up good and all that, but I don't want random loose bits of glass flying all over the house and stuff. And yeah, so that's kind of the setup. It's a relatively small studio. I'm on all generated oxygen. I've been that way for like a few years now, or a couple of years now, I guess.
Cool.
Over like 2.5, I guess. But once I got into the marine thing, it's so oxygen intense that there was no way I could like pay for tanks and keep trying to pursue this. And I'd always been on concentrators, so I've gone with the high volume oxygen system. I've run that for like a couple of years now. I've actually upgraded it to like the newest model head, and I just recently replaced my concentrators as well. So, but yeah, that's kind of the fundamentals of my studio there.
Right on. What how many torches can you run at a time? Just the one torch at a time on that?
Well, I mean, I've only got a 30. I've got the HV30, which has a 30-gallon storage tank.
Okay.
So you're fighting your reserve there, kind of like for bigger like if I had purchased this now, knowing I'm running a Herbert Arnold 40 millimeter, which is like a ridiculous hog on fuels, and the GTT, which is much more efficient, but it's a big torch too, man. It's not fucking around.
Yeah.
So if I had known that, I probably would have gone with the 60-gallon model to have a bigger storage tank. But the whole thing is modular, and if I really want to, I could add another 30 gallons. But since upgrading the head, I went from being able to store 100 psi in the tank to 150 psi. So that's like a third more reserve, and that really mitigates things with the bigger torches. But basically, I could probably run my main torch and like somebody on a smaller torch, like a Lynx or something, no problem. But with a big torch on a HV30, that's kind of a one-man situation. Guys like Dustin Revere, for example, he runs like a Delta Mag and then like a 8-torch teaching studio and then a few other torches around the studio itself. He's got like the HV60 with an extra 60 tank, to give an idea of what's possible with the scale. So like I'm on the lowest end of the scale imaginable in terms of my system,
Yeah.
But these other systems that have an additional compressor and storage tank and stuff, they can run exponentially more torches and huge torches at once, along with all those others. So yeah, mine's totally fine to probably run like my torch and then a smaller one, or my torches and the hand torch. But it's just like glass. It's all math. You've got your torches that need so many liters per minute in whatever flame size they're running. And, you've got your concentrators that are putting out X amount of LPM. Most of them are kind of set up for like 310s. It's like a 30 LPM system. And then how much reserve you have. If you have a 60-gallon tank that's compressed to 100, you've got this long, based on how much the torch is doing. And if you've got it at 150 and a 60-gallon, you're going to have significantly longer reserve, enough to potentially run another torch without ever getting below the minimal amount that the system can re-add. So yeah, it's I don't know. We've on Torch Talk, man. We've had like Scott from Oxygen Frog and Mark from High Volume. These are both nice guys. I've dealt with High Volume, so they're who I'd recommend just based on experience. But both of these guys are tight, and if you contact them and tell them what your needs are, they'll get you set up. Another group I run is called Concentrated Lamp Workers, and that's a place for people who do mostly DIY generated oxygen setups. And a lot of people are making their own in there for significantly less expense. So look that group up if that's something anybody out there is interested in.
Yeah, I'll put a link on the show notes for you.
Yeah, I'm just a huge proponent of generated oxygen. The concentrators that are coming out now, like Available Oxygen is one company that I know for a fact is upgrading their sieve material. And I've tested a couple machines owned by a friend. I now ordered a few for myself. They're all hitting over 97% pure oxygen. And really, this comes down to this guy replacing the sieve material with a different upgraded material that does higher concentrations at higher pressures. A lot of these companies are just refurbishing the machines, and seeing if they still output enough to not set off their alarms or whatever, or even just disabling the alarms. And as long as they still seem to put out oxygen. The earlier machines I owned were by Extreme Oxygen. And for example, they never hit anything above 90% pure oxygen until I returned them internally to 5 psi. So they went from 15 to 5 where they were supposed to be stock, and now they're all of a sudden putting out 95% pure oxygen.
Huh.
Whereas, available oxygen, his test out right out of the fucking box. And that's huge. I think HBO, and I know some other people are working with this sieve material as well. Like there's about to be a lot of options with really nice sieve material. It's an awesome time to get in on generated oxygen. And these like those concentrators, man, they've given the whole thing a bad name straight up, man. They're like 20 psi, you can run your torch.
Right.
But if it's at 88%, man, you're missing a huge chunk of heat from the top end, which makes all sorts of things more difficult. Flaring, all that stuff that you see people do effortlessly, that's dependent on having the right amount of heat in the glass.
Yeah, exactly.
You're missing hundreds of degrees off the top end as you get into the lower things. I've found this out the hard way. And I went from taking a class with Paramore and spinning out perfect feed, and stuff like that, to coming home and struggling. And I'm like, what am I fucking up here? And then right at that moment at which I returned all my machines to stock pressures that were feeding the HVO, that's, all of a sudden all that shit worked itself out instantly. There was no like in between practice. It just instantly everything went back to the way it was supposed to be. And, since then I've just been the hugest proponent of get everybody, if you're going to get a high volume system or a frog or build your own, or even just work off concentrators directly, get a purity tester, man. OxyCheck is the one I recommend. I don't own that one, but I have an Analox that's much nicer, but the replacement sensors are so expensive. The OxyCheck, that one is the same exact thing, but its replacement sensors are half the cost. So that's the one I recommend, and it's basically for testing diving tanks or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up the website here. OxyCheck, OxyCheq. They actually sell a DIY kit that's really cheap if you like to build stuff yourself. But the one I recommend, they sell the OxyCheck Expedition O2 analyzer. It's $309. I'm sorry, I know that's expensive. The El Cheapo 2 analyzer kit is only $110. But the reality is that if you're moving to generated oxygen, you need to know your purity level. If something is wrong with those machines, something is going to be wrong with your torch. Like, it'll keep working fine, but like I said, you're missing heat off the top end. You're going to have major problems with flame chemistry. And, as like I said, I'm a big proponent of generated oxygen. But what's been giving it a bad name is these jacked up concentrators that didn't actually put out the purity they claimed. And if you're not getting 95 or more, you're struggling. It's really, and 93 or less is seriously into like troubled territory. So,
yeah, I'm glad you're bringing all this up, man, because I think the wave of the future is home concentration systems, especially when you have the bigger companies out there, especially one in particular we all know that are just complete assholes and really make it difficult for a glass artist to become an established business. So this is the way to go, and I'm going to be bringing on OxyFrog on the show to to talk about him. He's local here in Florida. Not only is he a badass glass blower, but he's a badass scientist in a sense, making these systems. So,
yeah, his for those of you guys out there listening who want to build your own, man, it's practically required. I hate to be like pimping my own show here, but man, an episode you need to check out is his episode, and he'll probably talk about the same things on yours. But he really got deep into the design of these systems and talking about the compressors and the curves at which, their flow works. And it's really critical information. He did a knowledge bomb on the glass community on that episode. So yeah, if you just Google like Torch Talk, Oxygen Frog, or I don't know, let me look it up, I guess.
Yeah, I can put that
yeah,
on
it's like design of here, I'm coming up. Okay, here we go. Torch Talk 85. Oxygen Frog, design of custom on-demand oxygen systems. So yeah, this is like a 2-hour show, and he is got the whiteboard out, just really getting deep on this stuff. If you want to build your own, that's really something to check out. And even if you're just considering one of these systems, it's nice to know. I think both were great. The HVO, I'm currently hitting like 97.7% pure oxygen out of my tank, which required a little work. I've installed a delay, but basically HVO has been there right with me to along the way. All right, what do you need? What do we got to do now? And I just think both are excellent. They both work great, and when they're set up right, they're going to deliver like 1-to-1 ratio of what your concentrators are putting out to the tank, which that's what's ideal.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah, man, it's something I've always wanted to get into, and I remember back years ago looking into it, and it was like these systems are so fucking big, and they were loud, and it was like just ridiculous expensive. And I mean, don't get me wrong, some of these systems are $10,000 up to get a really super efficient big system set up. But when you do the math and you break it down over like 3 years, I mean, shit, they pay for themselves. I mean, it depends how much work you do. They could pay for themselves in the first year. Because I know, like, my oxygen bill was like $10,000 a year. Like, I was spending like $400 to $500 a month just on K tanks before I was even able to get liquid at my house. Before I was able to talk them into delivering a liquid to my backyard, basically. And it's like some of these companies, like Airgas, they want you to put down $1,500 minimum for a deposit. Put down 45 whatever references, give your firstborn child and your left nut to be able to even walk on their front door. So it's worth to even invest $5,000 on a used system if you can, whatever you got to do, to start getting yourself set up, because it's definitely the wave of the future. And eventually we're gonna be able to run this shit off solar power and everything else. It's gonna be huge. I mean, I'm fucking excited about it. Because our industry, for the most part, we're all very conscious, earth loving, hippie type folks that want to make a difference in this world. But like Mike Souza, who was on, I think it was Mike Souza or I remember whoever it was, they were talking about a talk they went to, and they asked this one artist, what his footprint was going to be that he left behind, and he said, probably the size of Rhode Island. And it's the reality of what we do. We have for those of us that do production or do a lot of high-end work, there's a lot of waste, a lot of scraps, a lot of shit going out. We're putting toxins out in the environment that are coming out of our, getting vented out of our studios, all that kind of shit. So whatever we can do to minimize our footprint, we got to start doing and start thinking about this. So I'm glad we're having this talk. It's definitely important.
Yeah, being conscious of it is definitely important. What's going on with the color companies and stuff, and just thinking about all of us melting that down on,
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like global warming back in the day, like some of us have a really good idea what's happening. The rest of us, maybe we're not sure about this. Are we really? You got to convince us. And I think this conversation for glass artists is really just beginning to get started. I think Adam Sims is one person who's been pretty vocal on this, is kind of calculating this footprint. Yeah. Generated oxygen may well be one of the ways we can help that, and if nothing else, it's just the carbon footprint of cars, all the delivery and all that. Yeah, it's honestly though, in my heart, I think this whole thing is probably a disaster for the Earth. Right? Like if Captain Planet ever shows up at my house, he's gonna be pissed.
Yep.
Like, dude, what the fuck are you blowing out of this vent outside of your house, dude? Come on.
Dude, like I kind of wonder down the road, like if the EPA is going to come in and step into like home studio situations like what we're dealing with, like.
Right. I certainly hope not.
Because if you're registered as a business, I mean, in a sense, you've exposed yourself to the quote unquote government and their entities and everything else. And, like I've heard horror stories of like, kind of a side note, like the cops or the DEA go into local oxygen companies to get lists of people who they delivered oxygen to and blah blah blah. And
Wow.
all of a sudden they're showing up at your house because they have your address and shit, kind of thing. But the reality is there. I mean, we're now that our industry is growing to where it is, it's becoming more known. That's why I always preach about paying your taxes, because the IRS knows what the fuck's going on. And I think down the road the EPA or something of that nature is going to come down on us as well, or OSHA or what. I mean, I don't know, but it's the reality of what we got to think about to make sure that we're safe and we're efficient. I mean, I don't know if for ventilation, if there's like some kind of like bag filter kind of gimmick you can put around your ventilation outside your house, to help capture some of that shit, like some kind of filter,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's stuff out there that
Mini bag house.
yeah, some kind of, but it's also probably very expensive. But at the same time, it might be a requirement that we all got to have down the road, or maybe someone listening to this could invent something like that. And I think that's what's going to happen.
Right.
Like someone's going to become innovative and come up with something that's going to help save our industry in a sense, or just make it more efficient and make it more earth friendly.
Right. Yeah. I'd like to. I don't know, how simple could you know what I mean? There could be something that could just axe 80% of it. That could be really easy. We just haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah. I mean, fuck, dude. The filtration systems nowadays are just amazing that you just get inside your house. Like I got this, it's called the Rainbow. I don't want to promote them or anything, but it's called a Rainbow, and I guess it's been around for like 60 years. Like it's a water filtration. It's an air filtration system, but it uses water to filter the air.
Okay.
And it's super expensive to buy like the high-end model, but it really shows how much shit it pulls out of your fucking air in your house just from looking at the water that's in there. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's neat.
But I'm sure down the road we'll have some kind of system like this set up to where we can hook it up to our ventilation system to help purify that shit. I mean, if you think about coal manufacturing companies or power companies that have these big chimney stacks that are just full of shit on the inside of the wall that they then scrape off and make fluoride, quote unquote, and put it in our water systems. But that's a whole other story. But like I wonder, like what's our inside of our ventilation? Like if you have a ventilation system in your house or your garage or your studio, like what's the inside of the wall of your ventilation system looking like? Like a ducts in our AC in our house. Like you gotta get that shit cleaned out every once in a while. Otherwise, you get build up, and you can start a fire because there's too much shit in there, or all that toxic stuff. I mean, who knows? And that's the thing. It's like I always like to question this stuff because like you're saying, we're so new, even though we've been doing this for a long time. But still, it's a new thing. It's growing so much exponentially daily. Yeah. That these kind of things got to be thought about and really tested and really figured out. Like the companies that are pushing out all this fucking color. How are they really testing it before they put it out? I would hope so. I would think so, but who knows, really?
Yeah. Yeah, quality control at some companies seems to be better than others these days.
Yeah.
But it's, I don't know, man. I'm tempted to go up to my attic. I've run my exhaust out through like a long hard duct in the attic. And I'm tempted to go like pop the fan off and just like hit a black light in there. see if the walls glow or something.
Right? Yeah, I mean, shit. You could have glass dust. I mean, you could all kind of shit in there. Who knows?
I'm sure there's glass dust. Yeah, that's for sure. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I remember a post. I don't even remember what group it was, but somebody had posted like a picture of their setup, and they were like, what do y'all think about this? And he had the fan shooting straight out the back. And it was like, that effect when in a video or even when you're like looking through a fan, if you look at it through the right angle, you can see straight through it essentially, Yep. The blade's moving. And when he looked at it straight on, that fan was aiming directly at the neighbor's tomato plants. And I remember I just like found some picture of like a silver, somebody made a tomato, like cast it in silver. I put that up as like a joke. But like, dude, what are you doing? I do not want to eat those tomatoes, bro. I don't know what to do with that marinara. Fuck that.
Yeah, I've seen some studio setups where they had their air coming in through their door in their garage, and their window was right next to the door with their fan blowing out. So all they're doing is just like bringing the shit right back in their studio. This big circle. Just, just goes round and round and round.
Yeah, that's pretty funny too.
so unsafe. But as we all grow and learn, and we make this more knowledgeable between your show and my show, it helps to save the world one day at a time.
Yeah, we're doing our best, and just as long as we're talking ventilation, this is kind of like my Torch Talk group policy. Whenever ventilation comes up, I want to make sure that Mike Aurelius, he has what's called a ventilation primer. Everybody should like Google this because it's might just like type in Aura Mike Aura ventilation primer, and it's gonna pop up, and it's like some pretty freaking detailed breakdowns of all these considerations, and that he's not fucking around with this math, y'all. So start thinking about it. There's all those breakdowns for like how many square feet is the opening, how many CFM do you need to move all this air, the right amount of air, so that it's being refreshed often enough that you're not sitting around in toxins. And yeah, it's really well done. And it's like we have like a guide for the moderators of Torch Talk, and I forget the wording, but I'm like, anytime ventilation comes up, like that primer needs to be linked, just to kind of cut people off at the pass from giving any bad advice,
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Y'all could say whatever the fuck you want as long as the primer is linked. And any truly bad information, our moderators are actually empowered to delete. We try not to censor much, but if you're gonna give some truly bad information that we all agree is fucked, that's going away. There's no place for that.
Yeah, I'm copy and pasting this link on here myself. Right now.
It doesn't happen too often, honestly. I mean, I know it's frustrating to some people out there. It's, oh man, it's the same blah 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 and all that, but in general, man, bad information just doesn't fly on there. And if it's up for a very short period of time without being contradicted. I know it must seem that way at a distance, but it's the guy who actually has to police it all.
Yeah, you do what you gotta do, and you guys do a good job at it. So it's appreciated.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we do our best, dude. It's Facebook. Something we were talking about before the show, man. It's the Wild West out there, and as the group got bigger, it's nearly 6,000 people in there now. And as it hit like 2,000, things got really hairy, and we really kind of had to we kind of just doubled down on this idea that we're not going to accept anything that's truly divisive. You can't come in there and start shitting on people. You got to be at least somewhat nice. There's none of that name calling. And ultimately, it's not been about creating necessarily like some hippie commune, that's fake, but more about creating an environment that matches what it's like when we all get together in person. Because when we all get together at an event, man, it's nothing but love, dude. Even people you disagree with and this and that. But when there's a keyboard involved, it's a lot easier to be harsh and to be less sensitive to the fact that you're dealing with a bunch of other human beings over there, man. Real people with lives that are probably not going well.
Yep.
Everybody's life is a healthy mix of shit and awesome, and for some people there's very little awesome. It's sad, but I just people should be sensitive to that, and especially when you're in a forum with 6,000 people, there's certain things that fly when we're all hanging out with 10 of us that simply can't go down in an environment with 2,000 or 3,000 or 6,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we've done our best to kind of bridge that gap between how people interact in person and how they interact online. It's a work in progress. This isn't, I didn't sign up for a PhD course in running a Facebook group. We're figuring this out as we go and doing our best.
Yeah, man. To kind of back up on that too, you want to give us a little bit of just a kind of because time's getting shorter, but give us a kind of a brief overview of Torch Talk and their Torch Talk Tuesday shows.
Yeah. It's a weekly show that we do on YouTube. We're live every Tuesday night, generally around like 9:30 East Coast time, closer to 10. Usually we aim for these times, but it's a little flexible. But yeah, we try and have a demo of some sort every week. Some flame working action, some discussion. It's usually a panel of guys, and we're chatting, and we're heavy on audience interaction. There's usually anywhere from 30 to 60 people watching live in our like YouTube chat room, so it's kind of become a glass party for that audience. And yeah, we always take questions and such. Yeah, and then from there we also have a nonprofit organization that basically coordinates the philanthropic efforts of this community. You know, it's kind of insane to us that this group has blown up so big, even beyond the audience of the show. I know there's a lot of people in there who may not even know we have a show.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we link it, you know, like, hey, how do you do this? And we're like, oh, we covered this on this episode. And they're like, holy shit, there's a Torch Talk show? I thought y'all were just a contentious group. And there's other, but yeah. So we try and keep it somewhat entertaining, informative as we can. But really, it all grew out of me and Will Young, who I co-host the show and co-direct the nonprofit with. Him and I and some other guys, we were taking online classes with Dustin Revere. And when those ended, we just wanted to keep getting together every week. And we're like, well, let's do it on the Hangouts platform like we've been doing the classes. And we decided to broadcast it as well, you know, because we wanted to give something back. And it's evolved a bit since then, but I'd like to think it's almost a good and a bad to me at this point, but we've kept it very low key. You know, part of me is like, man, we should really professionalize this because so many eyes are on it and it's blown up so fast. And, you know, but on the other hand, it's kind of just us and our homies getting together every week, trying to melt some glass and, you know, help each other learn maybe a little something, add a little tool to the toolbox. And yeah, with the nonprofit, we've made some really cool stuff happen. We worked with Bethlehem Burners with their Burning for Beads of Courage torch raffle that we did last year. And we generated over $8,000 for Beads of Courage, which is an organization that basically puts on things where lampwork beads are made, and then they're given to children with terminal or severe illness. So if this child misses school because they had a chemo session, they get this color bead. You know, if they had an operation for this, they get that color bead. It's, man, really, really neat. Everybody should Google this and support them. It's really one of the most amazing things that's being done with torch worked glass, in my opinion. It does so much for these kids and especially the parents too, man. Like there's like a CBS Sunday Morning segment about this, and they interview a number of parents, you know, and they look like fucking Mr. T with all their bead necklaces on, you know, and like, yeah. And that makes you realize though that their kids have gone through a ton of shit. And I don't know, somehow these things are cathartic for them. That's something I'm really proud of, that we were able to get that out and get so much attention to it. And so we were able to you know, basically if we'd raised less than the torch was worth, I'd have been like, fuck, we fucked up.
Right.
But, you know, we ended up doing way more than double what the torch was worth. And so that's, you know, a tremendous boon to that organization. And then kind of the thing that we've kind of personally concerned ourselves with is hunger. Will and I are both pretty big on that, man. If everybody was just taking care of this hunger issue locally, there wouldn't be hunger. And we're a big, you know, we have people all around the world in the Torch Talk community, but primarily America. And so kind of our compromise on that was this organization, Feeding America, which is highly, highly reviewed. They're dank. They turn around virtually all the money that goes in. I mean, they spend a lot on promotion, and some of their officers have pretty big salaries, but those are the dudes who earned it, man. You know, they could be helping Feeding America do way more, you know, or they could be like selling Microsoft's new Office package, you know, and making even more, you know, like you got to cut those people who are going to make a group or organization exponentially better. You got to compensate those folks. You know, you can't expect it to all be volunteers at that scale. So anyways, Charity Navigator, for anybody who's looking to donate to any charity, Charity Navigator is a site you should check out because they do some pretty detailed looks into all these charities, and some of them are disgusting in terms of the percentage of donations that they turn over to their actual cause. I mean, some of it is downright virtually criminal.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but Feeding America is really dope, and that's who we've pretty much partnered with on this. And we did a food drive last year and did I forget, like 23,000 meals, as I recall.
Nice.
22.5, I forget. Yeah, and then this year with the Hunger Fund sticker packs that I was mentioning earlier, we're over 28,000 meals now, and just from people getting fun sticker packs. We've had some awesome sponsors with that. Glass Alchemy, North Star, and GL33 have sponsored rounds so far. So it's been really awesome to get support from them, and that helps us make these packs. They're not just sticker packs. They come with a bonus item, either like a lighter leash or some marine cane or something that's actually something we can get in bulk that is gonna make it a nice value for everybody. And then they've come with glass samples, and we have a ton of stickers. So like I was mentioning, some of the memes that have gone big. As silly as it sounds, man, I'm pretty proud that we've been able to like print those, and like those are the ones. Whenever I go to classes now or events, I usually have a big wad of stickers with me, and I swear every time it's always the meme ones that people are like, oh fuck, I remember this meme. This is great. I can't wait to put this on some guy's kiln, or whatever it'll be. Like
Hilarious.
Yeah, those are the ones that really people seem to really like, and having something physically tangible, and being able to help people at the same time with it. I'm pretty freaking proud of that whole thing. So yeah, they come with like glass samples, preparatory stuff, tons of stickers, and it's all pretty much self-sufficient in that each round pays for the next. There's enough money left over to buy the color for the next round, to print a few new stickers, to get the bonus items, and to do the donation. So it's kind of like my Newman's Zone project. Yeah,
it's killer though, dude. That's awesome. You guys are doing that. Are you guys a 501? Are you a 501c3?
No, not yet. We're like in the middle of that application. We're registered in Virginia as a non-stock corporation right now, which is like the first step to like a federal nonprofit. So we're state nonprofit at this point, and if you give us money, you can't like write it off on your taxes, folks. Sorry, but we've tried to orient things to where that's not really a concern. You get a sticker pack and a couple bucks goes to Feeding America. Nobody was going to be filling out a tax form for $2.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, yeah, we're right now we're trying to do that. But ideally, and this is probably even more strategy than I should be discussing, but the idea of becoming a nonprofit is that we'll be able to attract grants and do things that, basically maybe put on events or just do really cool things for the flame working community with grant money that, otherwise we would have had to ask flame workers for. And we're broke, man. There's the lucky few who are getting exponential money for their work, and that's a great thing. But a lot of us are, struggling to even, get a decent hourly wage out of this right now.
Yep.
And yeah, so it's been kind of clutch that we, everything we do, man, we don't. One thing I say is that we're always a charity, never a charity case. And, nice. And I don't want people to have to be given to us out of pity. They should be getting something out of that. Like with the sticker packs, you're getting a bunch of glass samples, prep materials, or cool bonus things for your studio, and a shitload of stickers. There's no way you can calculate this out as like a pity donation. You're getting something nice for it. And we just don't ever want to be that way. This isn't like a GoFundMe sort of thing. We don't accept sponsorship for the show, only like the specific philanthropic projects that we've done. We don't want to be a drag on the community. We want this thing to benefit the community, and federally having that status, that to me is kind of the ultimate advantage of that. So it's, yeah, man,
that's huge. Yeah,
we're registered with the state, like I said, non-stock. And then I'm in the middle of that application, but I gotta be honest, it's not front burner shit, because there's, it's like, all right, am I really gonna rush towards having to fill out 40 grant applications?
Yeah.
So we put on a Torch Talk festival or something,
Yeah, exactly.
It's on the to-do list, but we're registered at the state level as a non-stock, which is Virginia's word for nonprofit. So
too cool.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, dude. Well, I guess on that note, let's go ahead and take a quick break to thank our sponsors, and then we'll come back and we'll get the Crash and Kiln round started.
All right, tight.
All right, cool, man. This segment of the Wise Guy Radio Show is brought to you by Zen Dude Fitness. Lose 10 pounds this month by joining the Zen Dude Fitness 4-week jump rope fat loss challenge. Brandon and Dan will take you on a guided journey towards becoming the best you. Get fit, have fun, and find new ways to eat healthy while still enjoying the sweeter side of life. Just takes 20 to 30 minutes a day and no gym required. For more info and to sign up for the free 4-week challenge, go to wiseguymedia.com/ZenDudeFitness. That's wiseguymedia.com/ZenDudeFitness. All right, we're back. So, it's our fun Crashing and Killing round, which consists of 7 questions. And you can give me a 30 to 60-second answer on each question. You can also expound upon them as well if you'd like, as always happens.
Right.
And,
I'm an expansive person.
Yeah, you and me both.
Can't shut me up, motherfuckers.
So the first question I always like to ask is if there's any living glass artists that you have not yet worked with. Who is it and why?
Yeah, I saw that. Jolex is the person I've decided is the answer to this question. It's Joel Myers. Awesome glass worker. Does incredible space themed stuff. But more importantly, he took the Lawrence Stump class with me. We spent a week with Lawrence Stump out there in California. And between like really respecting his work, and he was just so kind to me. That class was kind of above my skill level at that point, you know. Certainly everybody else in the class was. You know, I'd only been on the torch like a year at that point, maybe. And man, he was just super kind and, you know, always helping me with a little tip or a trick to help me, you know, as I was trying to attempt everything that was being taught. So yeah, man, shout outs to Jolex. That's somebody I'd like to actually get a chance to work with.
Hell yeah. Yeah, his work's badass. If you could describe the sound of glass cracking in one word, what is it?
Fuck. Like a drawn out fuck. Not like fuck, like everything's done, but like fuck, I gotta figure some shit out. Oh no. You know what I mean? Like it's like fuck, that's a drag. You know? That's exactly what I think when I hear that, man. I'm just like, fuck.
Hilarious.
Okay, what happened? What broke? You know? But that's what's important to me on that is like that I'm no longer like, oh man, the shit's done. Now it's just like, okay, what happened? Why did this happen? You know, now we've got it's just adding something to the agenda, you know, which I don't like that. I don't like.
Yeah, I hear you.
I like doing whatever I want, whenever I want, not having to fix a crack suddenly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like not a disaster. It's just a huge inconvenience at this point.
Hell yeah.
Fuck.
Yes, I'm actually writing these answers down now to have them in the show notes. Like I'm gonna try and compile like a whole page dedicated to all these questions.
Oh, nice.
So I'll have it with an F and like 25 U's.
Yeah.
So what are your top 5 favorite colors in glass?
All right, brilliant blue. It's just like a super easy to work cobalt, man. Really consistent. It's a really like, it's like the way it reflects light. It's not too dark. It's not too light. It's just like the perfect cobalt. It never reduces out. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Agua Mist is like Agua Azul's like underlooked cousin. It sets off so many beautiful color schemes that are kind of almost pastel oriented, as opposed to like Agua Azul, which is like, you know, a little bit more saturated and kind of sets off more traditional color schemes. Purple Lilac by North Star is like a gorgeous, when it's really thinned out, it's like this gorgeous transparent purple. As an overlay color though, it has that milky, like almost magical effect when you lay it over things. And like, try this, folks, trust me, lay that shit over something, and especially like cadmium, like rich, like solid colors, it makes like velvet versions of the same color, like a satiny velvet looking version of it. Like lay that purple lilac over like an iris or like purple urple or something. And not even necessarily a cad, just one of those rich opaques. And it's just so beautiful.
Yeah,
so like I feel like you just can't go wrong with that color unless you don't, it has some of that milkiness if you're not into that. But I mean, I'm saying that's what makes it magical. Opaline kind of does the same thing actually as an overlay color, and it's gorgeous. It's just so difficult to work, so it's like purple lilac. Half Blood is like super consistent striking red, easy as hell to work, and the tone of it, I prefer it to like Elvis or like whatever other striking reds are out there. It's just this beautiful, rich candy red. It like I just want to eat that shit. So Half Blood is my my shit as like an overlay color, striping color, over clear, whatever. I'm trying to make red tubing.
Yep.
Even when I pull it down to like 12 mil, if I'm making a drop down or something like that, it's still this gorgeous, rich, just like I said, candy red. It looks like a piece of hard red candy. Just fuck yeah. And then number 5, I'm going with Serum. I'm sorry, I know it's some hype shit, but like some people are over it. But to me, though, like it's magic, man. It's freaking, I've got some, and I take it outside. It's all yellow and it's all super, super like rose pink inside. That it's fucking awesome. I can't believe that people are even going through all the trouble of making shit like that, And it just kind of speaks to what a cool cottage industry colored borosilicate glass is. And as much as there's this hype element to it, and I don't necessarily like that, and I could never imagine being one of those guys who buys some and then sells it for 3 times as much or whatever. Just forget all that. And all I'm thinking about is the fact that this glass that I love does some magical shit, and Serum is ace with it. There's some other new ones that the guys are making, but I've never had a chance to work with them. But they have even more dramatic CFL color shifts.
Yeah.
Like I think it's Gannett color glass or something. Maybe I'm going off the top of my head here. I'm being rude because he posts in Torch Talk randomly, and it's always nice. But I'm drawing a blank on the name. But anyways, Serum is one that I actually have and have played with, and I think it's just fucking magical, and it's awesome to me that people are making glass that does shit like this, that it was worth their time to throw neodymium or whatever the fuck they're using in there and calculate it all out. It's oh man, there'll come a time perhaps when this critical mass won't be in place, to where they can even justify trying that.
Yeah.
So I think the whole thing is awesome, and hype is just a double-edged sword. If there weren't that hype, they wouldn't be making that cool shit in the first place.
Yep, exactly.
So yeah,
hell yeah.
Those are some colors I like.
Nice. So what's your worst injury in the studio?
Okay, we can cut this. We can go with cuts or burns.
Yeah.
Cuts, man. I was like trying to wrap and rake something way before I knew what I was doing, and I put way too much pressure in it. Rod cracked, sliced my shit open. I'm laying on the floor at Redemption, which is like Mike Lewis's company, laying on the floor in shock. There was like a sweat angel of my body when I was done. Yeah, that was pretty bad. But I really think the worst injury is when I was live on Torch Talk. I had the Herbert Arnold on. I didn't realize it was on, though. It was in like pinpoint flame mode. So like from the angle I was sitting, it looked like it was off.
Yeah, that's invisible. I know what you mean.
Yep, and I had my headset on because we're doing the show and we don't want feedback, so headsets are a must. So I couldn't hear it. And at one point, I was just nonchalantly, without even thinking about it, I was resting my hand because I'd been working, and then I was taking a break on the show. And I was just kind of like nonchalantly resting my hand on the Marver or whatever. And without even thinking about it, I slipped it down the face of the torch. And yeah, so basically, like, it just kind of took a tiny pinpoint chunk out of my index finger on my right hand. And the other finger that was like opposite, because my hand was closed, so I kind of hit right in between. And that other one had a blister that was like, the burn itself was much smaller, but it was like a third of my finger was turned into a freaking blister. And yeah, it was a different kind of burn. It was like a deep, deep burn that like destroyed the flesh inside of my finger, not on the outside,
Yep.
Like, and I can still put my fingers up to each other and see there's like just this little divot because that Herbert Arnold pinpoint flame erased from existence, like down the memory hole, that portion of my finger. And it could only rebuild so much,
Yeah,
so I think that's the worst one, and it's even more embarrassing that it happened live on the show. And I don't remember which episode, but even if I did, I probably would act like I didn't. So.
Exactly.
Like, I don't know.
That's too funny. So,
can.
yeah, right. I'll look for it and put it up there. So, do you have any glass blowing themed tattoos?
No, I'm not a big tattoo guy. I'm kind of a pussy. No, I've always had like this institutional objection because I'm afraid that like 5 years later I'll regret it. So I'm not a pussy about like the pain or any of the physical aspect of it. I'm just afraid of the potential mental pain of regretting a tattoo later.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm scared of. So, like,
Hell yeah.
Mentally a coward.
Cool.
Physically, I'm okay. I'm brave.
So our last final one is if you were stranded on an island, it could be a fantasy island of your choice that had a glass studio on it and supplied your gases, your kiln, and your torch.
Oh, it supplies the torch too. Okay.
Yes, sir. And you had to make something in order to survive. What 5 items would you bring?
All right. Well, I had a torch on that list because my version of the question didn't have the torch. So, but we'll just start. Okay, Jax. In a situation like this, if it's only 5 items, man, I gotta go with the one that allows me to eliminate a bunch of items.
Mm-hmm.
The Jax, that's that, because man, I can use that. Like I've gotten comfortable enough with it that I even use them for really small stuff, like reaming out like bales for a pendant or something, like a hollow bale. You know, even the little tiny tubing, man. I've gotten that muscle memory down of like bringing the tip of that jack right into those small hole, even if it's way far away from the handle, you know?
Yeah.
I'm in there, man. Jacks give me like a paddle. They give me multiple reaming surfaces. Yeah. Steelhead claw grabber. It's like a really big claw, but it's by far the most versatile. Like, I've got a bunch of Herbert Arnold claws, but they're only good in very specific ranges. So I'd have to go with the steelhead claw. A Jaws tool I want to bring. Because like I thought a lot about this. I was like, man, because I've like a lot of my work is marine oriented, and I need like specific size chips for it and stuff. I was thinking this through. The Jaws tool is the way to go. It's just way more versatile than disc nippers because it will allow me to break down big tubing, but will also allow me to like, in lieu of disc nippers or a saw, it's gonna allow me to make little scores. So like I could score and then lens up and then just snap it off.
Hell yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Plus all the other things it can do. You know, if I want to work off points, if I want to work off blow tubes, you know, I'm going to be able to crack those open real quick. Glasses, I'm going to bring an Aura split lens 3 and 5.
Hell yeah.
At home, I have like pairs of in 3 and in 5, and I just switch as needed. But if I'm going to an island, I got to bring the 3 and the 5. I left that other slot open because I was like, Herbie 60 millimeter, you know. But if the Herbie's like coming with me as like part of my like default appearance package, yep. Yeah, I don't know. That one, maybe diamond shears, maybe the parallel mashers. I kind of like the idea of having a masher, but you know, if I've got the jacks, I can kind of mash with the other end. That one haven't had the full opportunity to think about. I also might consider my tooling rollers because this is kind of like a Kiva Ford thing. You know, I learned to work with those with him, and they allow you to check for straightness at any point in the process. To me, that is critical. You can get away with things being, you know, these close approximations, but having the tooling rollers and being able to check at every step in the process that you're perfectly on axis, that makes everything so much easier, you know.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, I mean, pushing Marias, tapering, you know, anything that involves these movements, you know, while you're rotating the glass. If it's coming off as you're doing that rotation, and you know, you might potentially do 9, 10, you know, depending on your handle size. Mm-hmm. You might get 3 or 4. You might get 10 or 15. You know. Off of like a point that has a smaller diameter handle. So like if it's coming off X amount of degrees each rotation, you know, there's just no way you're going to be able to keep a straight anything. And, you know, things can look pretty damn good roughing it out if you take your time, you know, and kind of rotate and see the handle on the other side go up or down. But being able to check for true straightness on a tooling roller, that's pretty clutch. I think my 5th item would have to be the tooling roller if I don't have to use one of those slots for the torch.
Cool. Hell yeah.
Yeah, and then plus, I mean, you can tool things on it, of course. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, it makes like flaring blow tubes so fast and easy. And if you're gonna make joints and stuff like that, it's man, anything small that you can just kind of rotate on a tool on that thing, awesome.
Hell yeah. Well, good
Yeah.
shit, dude. This has been all over the place talking. It's been a lot of fun, and I think educational in lots of areas, especially talking about being conscious about the earth and yourself and learning and lessons and getting a good foundation. So I definitely appreciate the chit chat for sure, man.
Cheers, man. Yeah, I don't know. I think the secret to life is figuring out what we like to fuck up and then not doing it.
Yep.
For real, you know what I mean? And so getting off on the right foot with all these processes is just so critical. And even in terms of your work habits and stuff, if you know that something's keeping you from getting to that torch every day and not putting the time in, nip that shit in the bud.
That's it, man. Hell yeah. Well said.
Yeah, know thyself. The Matrix.
Yeah, exactly. Hell yeah, dude. Well, before I let you go, if you want to tell us where we can find you out there in cyberspace.
Yeah, my Instagram is Mike Mason Glass. Someday my website will be back up. It's like down. It used to be all about my web development and product development, but it's MikeMasonDesign.com. TorchTalk.com will take you to the Torch Talk channel and also maybe a proper Torch Talk site someday. So
yeah.
We have one in the works. It's just this isn't like a big commercial thing for us, man. This is something fun we're trying to do to give back, and so there's just been no impetus to have a website up and an online shop where you can buy a Torch Talk hoodie. We'll do that shit someday. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
But right now, it's just hasn't happened. Also on Facebook, it's just facebook.com/Mike Mason. And if you want to email me, it's mikemason@gmail.com.
Sweet.
Yeah, I try to get Mike Mason wherever I can. But the email has been a bit of a hassle because every time any Mike Mason in the world gets their email wrong, I get it. And trust me, man,
Sucks.
like travel agents, business contacts, it gets fucking crazy. Like, people are really stupid. Like, they just assume when they meet a Mike Mason that he's MikeMason@gmail.com. And then they email him personal photos and all sorts of dumb shit. And no, you're actually emailing just me. So don't do that.
Exactly. Bastards.
Yeah, no, it's funny, and yeah, sometimes it's amusing though.
Yep.
One time I had a woman emailing me, and she thought that I was her estranged husband, and I'm like, hey, I'm not this guy.
Weird. That sucks.
And she kept writing back, "You coward! You just won't deal with me." And da da da. You can't tell me you're some other person. Blah. Like, lady, come on. I can see why he left.
Yeah. Well, on that note, my man, it was good. It was good chatting with you. And
Yeah, man, that was a real pleasure, dude. I hope I wasn't too rambly.
oh, it's okay. We both ramble, so
Yeah, I go deep on a tangent, baby.
yeah, me too. So
Good times, Mel. Thanks so much for having me, man.
Yeah.
I love the show, and it's like I said, it's an honor to be here and kind of get to share a bit of my current perspective.
yeah, absolutely, man. So hope you guys enjoyed this conversation with Mike Mason. Definitely go check him out at Torch Talk on Torch Talk Tuesdays. Him and Will both are doing a great thing there, and you can find them at facebook.com/Torch Talk. All the links and notes we talked about will be in the show notes. And other than that, hope you guys enjoy. We'll see you next time on the Wise Guy Radio Show. Take it easy.
Yeah, tight. Thanks so much, everybody.
Yeah, man. Peace. This episode is also brought to you by C-Cube Co. C-Cube now creates a wide range of specialty and one-of-a-kind artistic glassware, items such as hand-blown wine crafts, insulated coffee mugs, pint glasses, and custom piggy banks that you can have personalized with imprinting, logos, and color accents that are available. Just go to C-Cube Co., that's SEACUBECO.com for more information. That's CCubeCo.com. This episode is also brought to you by The Flow Magazine. Since its inception, the focus of The Flow has been to provide a bond among members of the lampworking community. This has been accomplished by developing relationships with the finest artists and sharing their techniques with you through in-depth, step-by-step tutorials. In every issue, you can enjoy great content with the hottest artists and cutting-edge techniques using the latest industry products. These features, along with the continuation of the Women in Glass edition, Glasscraft Emerging Artist Awards, inspiring gallery showcases, dynamic general interest articles, as well as health and safety information, make The Flow the leading international lampworking journal. For more information or to subscribe to The Flow, go to theflowmagazine.com. That's theflowmagazine.com. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show. If you have any questions, comments, or remarks, please leave them in the show notes page area where it says comments. We'll see you soon. Have a wise night.